The whole world knew him as the world's youngest leader, but no one knew what he was fighting alone that night in the corridors of his palace, against an invisible enemy coursing through his own blood. The moment he took that first bite, he knew something had changed. This was no ordinary dinner. This was the beginning of an assassination. The dining hall in the presidential palace in Ouagadougou was usually a calm and orderly place where the fatigue of the day was shed. That evening had started the same way. Captain Ibrahim Traoré had finally sat down at his table after a long and intense day. As usual, a few of his trusted advisors were with him. "This week we have the opening of the water project in the northern region, sir," said Minister of Economy Coulibaly, looking at the notes in his file. "The villagers are waiting for you eagerly." Traoré nodded, taking a forkful of the traditional Burkina Faso dish of rice and fried chicken. "The drinking water project is the 32nd of the 50 new projects we promised," he said as he brought the fork to his mouth. "To reach our goal, we need to move faster." He couldn't finish his sentence. He suddenly felt a burning in his throat, followed by a pressure in his chest. A strange warmth slowly spread through his body, making him feel as if the blood in his veins was freezing. His vision began to blur, and his ears started to ring. "Mr. President, are you all right?" asked Minister of Interior Cabaret, leaning towards him with concern. Traoré couldn't answer. He reached for his glass of water, but his trembling hand knocked it over. The water spilling on the table was a silent proof of his loss of control. Something was terribly wrong. The hall instantly descended into chaos. Guards rushed in. Ministers stood up in panic and voices mixed together. Traoré tried to stay conscious, but everything around him was disappearing behind a curtain of fog. "Seal all entrances and exits to the palace," ordered Chief of Security Ouagadougou. "No one gets in, no one gets out. This is an assassination attempt." Ouagadougou rushed to Traoré's side. The young leader was now shaking, struggling to breathe. "Hold on, Mr. President. Help is on the way," he whispered. The palace medical team arrived within minutes. Dr. Zongo checked Traoré's pupils and felt his pulse. The expression on his face said it all. "It's a chemical poisoning," he said in a tense voice. "He needs to be taken to the hospital immediately." The last thing Traoré heard before losing consciousness was Dr. Zongo's desperate voice. "The poison is spreading very fast. We are running out of time." But the real shock was that the betrayal had come from his inner circle. And this poison targeted not only the captain's body, but also the fate of Burkina Faso. Traoré didn't know it yet. But this was just the first act of a multi-layered war launched against him. The special section of the Burkina Faso Central Military Hospital was isolated from the outside world with heavy security measures. The corridors were filled with armed soldiers on alert at every moment. In a special room, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was engaged in a relentless fight for his life against the poison spreading through his veins. Machines attached to his body monitored his vital functions moment by moment. Outside the hospital, the news had already spread. Hundreds of people had gathered, praying for their leader. On social media, the hashtag #PrayForTraoré had turned into a global trend. Different voices rose from the crowd. "This is the work of Western powers." A group shouted, "Traoré was the biggest obstacle on their path to our independence." Another person said, "No, this is the work of traitors from within. The snakes living in the palace." Whatever the truth, as Burkina Faso's young leader wrestled with death, the entire country held its breath, waiting. In the hospital corridor, Chief of Security Ouagadougou, Minister of Interior Traoré, and Prime Minister Diallo had gathered in anxiety. "What is the situation?" asked Diallo. Dr. Zongo, showing the report in his hand, said, "Critical but stable. The poison is very sophisticated. The laboratory analysis is ongoing. This is not a poison that an ordinary person could produce." Ouagadougou lowered his voice and said, "This is an assassination attempt, and it must have come from the inside. Who prepared the president's food? Who was at the table? We must investigate everything. Everyone." Prime Minister Diallo tried to calm the atmosphere, saying, "We must remain calm. Panic and accusations will harm us." The most important thing right now is the president's survival and the country's stability. However, the suspicion in Traore's eyes had not faded. The investigation must also begin. Everyone in the palace is a suspect. From the cooks to the advisors, from the guards to the servants. What Ouedraogo said next sent a chill down the corridor. I'm afraid that we are also on the list of suspects. At that moment, the trust between them exploded like a bomb dropped on the palace. Everyone suspected each other. It was at this point that Traore made the historic decision that would pit him against the entire world. But first, he had to break this circle of betrayal. To implement his plan, he had to survive. At that very moment, in a modest suburban house in Ouagadougou, a 63-year-old man was listening to the news on the radio. His name was Maurice Sankara, the former intelligence chief of Burkina Faso. 3 years ago, one of Traore's first acts upon coming to power was to remove him from office. It is confirmed that President Ibrahim Traoré has been poisoned, the radio announcer said. His condition is reported as critical. Sankara took a deep breath. There was a long history between him and Traoré. Traoré had accused him of collaborating with the French, removed him from office, and placed him under house arrest. Although he had regained partial freedom in the last year, he was still under surveillance. The ringing of the phone pulled him from his thoughts. The caller was a former colleague. Maurice, they will contact you. The voice on the line said, "Be ready." Who? Sankara asked, in surprise. Those in the palace. They will call you to investigate the poisoning. Sankara laughed. Don't be ridiculous. Traoré hates me. He accused me of treason. Maybe, the voice on the other end said. But right now he doesn't know who to trust inside. There's only one reason he would want you. What is it? That your hatred for him is known by everyone. If even you can prove he wasn't killed by your side, he can find the real culprit. Maurice Sankara's prediction came true. The next morning, there was a knock on his door. Outside, 2 cars from the presidential convoy were waiting. A young officer said, "Mr. Sankara, there are people who want to see you." Sankara nodded. He was expecting this. He quickly got ready and got into the car. The convoy went directly to the military hospital. In the hospital corridor, Prime Minister Diallo, Chief of Security Ouedraogo, and Minister of Interior Traore were waiting for him. All 3 had the same expression on their faces: concern, suspicion, and a slight embarrassment. "Mr. Sankara," Diallo said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Sankara did not shake his hand. "Did I have a choice, Mr. Prime Minister? I was once accused of treason, and now, as I understand it, you need my help." Traore interjected. "The country needs your help. The president is in critical condition, and someone tried to kill him." Ouedraogo added, "Someone from the inside. The food was prepared and served in the palace. Everyone is a suspect." Sankara gave them a cold look. "So why me? You kept me in isolation for 3 years. Traore ruined my career and my reputation." "That's precisely why," Diallo said. "If even one of the president's greatest enemies wants to save him, we can find the real culprit." Sankara thought. This was a perfect opportunity for revenge. If Traore died, perhaps his own life would return to normal. But this was an attack so vile, it shouldn't be done even to an enemy. "What happened?" Sankara asked. "Tell me the details." Last night at an official dinner, the president showed signs of poisoning after the first few bites. Traore said, "Laboratory analyses are ongoing, but initial results point to an exotic and rare poison. We are investigating everything and everyone in the palace. You have full authority in this operation," Diallo said. "You will have access to all records, personnel, and security cameras." Ouedraogo completed. "However, you will report the results to us first. We do not want to create panic." Sankara nodded in understanding. "Can I see the president?" The 3 men looked at each other in surprise. "Why?" Traore asked suspiciously. "Because I want to understand the poison," Sankara said. "The symptoms, the effects, the severity. This will give me an idea about the type of poison and its possible source." Under intense security measures, Sankara was admitted to the room where the president was receiving special treatment. Ibrahim Traoré was lying in bed, pale, connected to machines, and defenseless. The man who had removed him from office and sent him into exile 3 years ago was now fighting for his life. "Give us 10 minutes, Sankara said to the doctors and nurses in the room. When the medical team left, Sankara slowly approached the bed. He looked at Ibrahim Traoré's face. His eyes were closed, but his chest was rising and falling slightly. He was alive. "You know, Mr. President," Sankara said slowly, "I never liked you. When you removed me from office, I wished for your death. But not like this." He paused thoughtfully. "It is more honorable to defeat an enemy by looking into their eyes than to poison them in the shadows." The monitors beeped steadily. Traoré's condition was stable, but critical. "Who poisoned you and why?" Sankara murmured. "I will find out. Not for you, but for my own honor." Sankara examined Traoré's medical reports. The poison was fast-acting but not lethal. This was a conscious choice. The goal wasn't to kill but to harm. Why? Just then, Traoré's eyes slightly opened. He was struggling to focus but recognized Sankara. In a weak voice, he whispered, "You. So it was you. I did not poison you," Sankara said quickly. "I am here to save you." In a barely audible voice, Traoré asked, "Why?" "Because whoever poisoned you is also harming Burkina Faso," Sankara said. "And I do not betray my country." Traoré's eyes closed again. He had lost consciousness. Sankara took a deep breath and left the room. The investigation had begun, but he was not yet aware of the secret document in the hands of the French ambassador and the file prepared for him in Paris. This poison was just a drop in the ocean. The east wing of the palace had been converted into a temporary investigation center. Maurice Sankara was examining files around a table. With him were 2 former intelligence officers who had remained loyal to him and had not been dismissed by Traoré. "Now," said Sankara, "I first want to understand the food chain. How is the food prepared in the palace, and how does it reach the president's table step by step?" Ibrahim had the palace's head chef brought in. Chef Bamana stood before them with trembling hands. In a kind voice, Sankara said, "Mr. Bamana, do not be afraid. We do not think you had anything to do with this. We just want to understand the processes." The chef nodded, somewhat relieved. "I have been working in the palace for 14 years, sir. I have served 3 presidents. I prepared President Traoré's meal as always. Rice, fried chicken, and vegetables. The president's favorite meal. Where do you get the ingredients from?" Sankara asked. "From the palace's own farm," the chef said. "For security, all food is specially grown. Every shipment is checked. And how does the food get to the table after it's prepared?" "Through the waiters," said the chef. "Last night it was Suleiman who brought the food to the president's table, a trusted waiter of 8 years. Sankara took notes. "And who was at the president's table last night?" "Minister of Interior, Traoré, Minister of Economy, Koulibaly, Chief of Security, Ouedraogo, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Zeta," said the chef. "And of course, President Traoré." After dismissing the chef, Sankara turned to Ouedraogo. "Find the waiter Suleiman immediately." However, Suleiman was nowhere to be found. The investigation team learned that he had been missing since last night. His house was empty, his phone was off. "Here's our suspect," said Ouedraogo. "Classic. Commit the crime, then run." Sankara shook his head. "That would be too easy. The waiter is probably dead. He might have been the one who carried the poison, but we need to find the mastermind behind it." "Where do we start then?" asked one of his assistants. "The waiter's family, his friends," Sankara said. "Who did he meet with in recent days? Did he have any unusual expenses? A new phone, watch, car? Was a large sum of money deposited into his bank account?" The team quickly took action. A search of the waiter's house revealed no valuable items, but in a hidden compartment in the bedroom, there was an envelope containing foreign currency, $10,000. "Evidence?" said Ouedraogo, "but we don't know who gave it." "Give me the security camera footage of the palace," Sankara said. I want to see everything from the past week. In the palace's security room, Sankara and his team spent hours watching the footage. They tracked all of the waiter Suleiman's movements. Stop, Sankara said suddenly. Last Tuesday, 2:32 p.m., Suleiman is talking to someone in the palace's back garden. The person on the screen was one of the palace advisors, Hamidou Savadogo, the foreign relations advisor. Zoom in, said Sankara. Savadogo was handing the waiter a small envelope. There's the person who gave the money, said Ula Drago. Maybe, said Sankara, but I'm not sure if he's the poisoner. Find Savadogo and bring him in. Savadogo was found in his office in the west wing of the palace. When brought to the interrogation room, he appeared calm. Mr. Savadogo, Sankara said, what did you discuss with the waiter Suleiman in the back garden last Tuesday? Savadogo, feigning surprise, asked, What? Oh, I gave him a small gift. His mother was ill. I wanted to help. 10,000 Traore said. A rather generous gift. Savadogo's facial expression did not change. So what? Can't I do what I want with my own money? Of course you can, Sankara said. But the timing is interesting. The waiter receives money, then the president is poisoned, and the waiter disappears. Do you have an explanation for this? Savadogo started to look uncomfortable. I didn't poison anyone, and I don't know where Suleiman is. Then why did you withdraw $50,000 from your overseas bank account 2 weeks ago? Sankara asked, showing a document. Savadogo's eyes widened. You investigated my accounts, Sankara continued. 3 hours ago. You had a hotel reservation in Paris. You were about to flee the country. Savadogo jumped to his feet. I was just a middleman. I swear. Who's middleman? Sankara asked without raising his voice. I can't say, Savadogo said, sweat beading on his forehead. They'll kill me. Savadogo nodded. But not to kill him, just to make him sick. The poison wasn't lethal. I swear. He would be sick for a few weeks, during which time the Prime Minister would take over the administration and sign some agreements. Which agreements? Returning gold rights to French mining companies, renewing the military base agreement, new economic partnerships. Sankara looked at Savadogo with a cold expression. And Suleiman, where is he? Savadogo said, trembling. I don't know. I gave him the poison, and he put it in the food. After implementing the plan, he was supposed to escape. He was also paid. You won't believe it, but when it was revealed who those golds actually belonged to, and the real power behind these agreements was understood, the poisoning incident would remain just a small part of a grand conspiracy. The coded message that arrived from the Cobra unit at that moment would change everything. Hours later, Maurice Sankara met with Prime Minister Diallo, Chief of Security Ouedraogo, and Minister of Interior Traore. He told them everything they had discovered. So, the French, Diallo said thoughtfully. They were disturbed by Burkina Faso's new independent policy. Savadogo has been arrested, said Ouedraogo. But the real culprits are beyond our borders. We have initiated a search everywhere for the waiter, said Traore. But he may have escaped. He did not escape, Sankara said in a definitive voice. They killed him. They cleaned up the tracks. What should we do? Asked Diallo. Should we make this information public? Not yet, said Sankara. First, we should wait for the president to recover. And I have a plan. Sankara proposed a plan to trap the French Foreign Ministry official, Pierre Dumont. Savadogo would tell Dumont that Traore's condition had worsened, and that the Prime Minister had temporarily taken over the administration. Dumont would come to Burkina Faso secretly to sign the agreements, and then he would be caught. A risky plan, Traore said worriedly. But if it works, we will clearly document the French intervention, Sankara said, and President Traore will emerge even stronger from this situation. At the hospital, Ibrahim Traoré's condition was slowly improving. Doctors reported that the effect of the poison was beginning to diminish. His consciousness was returning intermittently, but he still had not fully recovered. Sankara visited the hospital twice a day to check on Traoré's condition. On the third day, Traore stayed awake longer and was able to talk with Sankara. "How do you feel, Mr. President?" Sankara asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Like I've been hit by a truck," Traore said in a weak voice. "But I'm alive. Who did this?" Sankara told him what had happened. All the information about the waiter Suleiman, the advisor Savadogo, and the French official Dumont. Traore listened in silence. "So the French are still trying to control our country," he finally said. "Our independence and our rights over our resources disturb them." Sankara hesitated. "Mr. President, we have a plan to catch the people who poisoned you. But it's risky." "Tell me," Traore said, a spark of interest in his eyes. Sankara explained the plan to trap Dumont. They would spread the lie that Traore's condition had worsened, and there might even be news of his death for a while. This would cause those involved in the conspiracy to reveal themselves. "Do it," Traore said with determination. "We need to know who wants to govern us, who wants to control us." The plan was quickly put into action. The next day, the Burkina Faso Ministry of Health announced that President Traore's condition had worsened. The first press release stated that his condition was critical and unstable. The second announced that he had been placed on life support. Savadogo sent a controlled message from his cell. He informed Pierre Dumont that the situation was more serious than expected, and that the president would probably die within a few days. Prime Minister Diallo has now temporarily taken over the administration. He is ready to sign the agreements, he wrote. All security units in Burkina Faso were on high alert, but this status was kept secret. A special operations team was on standby under Sankara's direct command. 2 days later, international radio and television channels announced the shocking news: Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré, has died. This was a planned false report, but its effect was immediate. In the capital, Ouagadougou, thousands of people took to the streets, crying, praying, angry. The sudden loss of a young leader had plunged the entire country into mourning. Within hours, a diplomat from the French embassy in Ouagadougou entered the country. This was Pierre Dumont, introduced as an assistant. As a matter of protocol, he would have a condolence meeting with Prime Minister Diallo. A special meeting room had been prepared in the Prime Minister's building. Diallo, Maurice Sankara, and 2 security officers were there. When Dumont entered, there was a fake expression of sadness on his face. "Mr. Prime Minister," said the French diplomat, "on behalf of the French Republic, I offer my condolences for the loss of President Traoré. We are with you in this difficult time." Diallo nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Dumont. Please sit down. We have things to discuss." Dumont looked at Sankara suspiciously. "This was supposed to be a private meeting, wasn't it?" "Mr. Sankara is my security advisor," Diallo said, "and our topics today are precisely about security." "As you wish," Dumont said, trying to appear comfortable. "Mr. Dumont," Diallo said, "it is very kind of you to come specially from Paris, especially since you do not have an official position." Dumont's expression changed. "What do you mean? I am a senior diplomat of the French embassy." "No, you are not," Sankara said, opening a folder. "You are an operative of the French Foreign Intelligence Service, and you are conducting intelligence activities in our country." Dumont's face turned pale. "This is nonsense. Last night you had a 20-minute phone conversation with Hamidou Savadogo." "We recorded your conversation," Sankara said. He pressed a button, and the audio recording began to play. Dumont's voice was clearly audible. "Are you sure? Is Traoré really dead? This is great news. I'm coming right away to get the agreement signed." Dumont's face was now completely white. This could be fabricated." "Mr. Dumont," Diallo said in a serious voice, "you are charged with the attempted assassination of a head of state on the territory of Burkina Faso." Dumont frantically stood up. "I have diplomatic immunity. You cannot touch me." Sankara also stood up. "You are not a diplomat. You are an intelligence operative, and you are part of an assassination plot." At that moment, the side door of the room opened, and Ibrahim Traoré walked in. His face was still pale. He stumbled slightly as he walked, but he was alive and standing. Dumont was in shock. This is impossible. I am stronger than you thought, Mr. Dumont, Traore said in a calm voice. And so is Burkina Faso. Dumont was arrested and exposed before the international press. The French ambassador was urgently recalled to his country and forced to make a statement. The French government claimed that Dumont had acted individually and did not represent France's official policy, but no one believed this explanation. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. The secret file prepared for him in Paris and the 17 suitcases inside it would change everything. Ibrahim Traoré addressed the public and told them about his experience. He described the poisoning attempt as an attack on the independence and sovereignty of Burkina Faso. This incident has shown us, Traoré said, that independence is not easily won. We must struggle every day, at every step. But it has also shown that if we detect the betrayals among us and recognize our true friends, no external power can defeat us. In a surprising decision, Traoré appointed Maurice Sankara as the National Security Advisor. This meant bringing the man he had dismissed 3 years ago to the position he trusted most. After the press conference, Traoré and Sankara were left alone. "Why?" Sankara asked. "Why do you trust me? I could have betrayed you." Traoré smiled. "But you didn't. I knew that your hatred for me was less than your love for your country." 6 months after this incident, Burkina Faso was in a stronger position. The French military base had been removed from the country, and mining rights had been reorganized. Ibrahim Traoré and Maurice Sankara were ensuring the country's progress on the path to independence together. One evening, while standing on the balcony of the presidential palace, Traoré turned to Sankara. "You know, Maurice, sometimes the greatest enemies can become the best allies." Sankara nodded thoughtfully. "Because a real enemy, at least, is honest. Their motivations are clear." "Exactly," Traoré said. "And now I understand that dismissing you 3 years ago was a mistake. You were just following a different path. But the goal was the same. The independence of Burkina Faso." "Perhaps the poison was a medicine for us," Sankara said, thoughtfully. "Sometimes the difference between poison and medicine is just the dose." Ibrahim Traoré looked at the sun on the horizon. "And sometimes the truth itself is poisonous, but at the same time, it is the only cure." The two former enemies now stood side by side looking at the future of their country. The poisoned truth had united them, strengthened them, and set their country on a safer path. But when the phone rang, he realized the voice on the other end was from Moscow. The real struggle was just beginning. The call from Moscow was a turning point that changed the course of everything. The voice on the other end belonged to the special advisor to the President of Russia. The message was clear. "Mr. President, our sources in Paris have informed us that a much larger operation is being prepared against you and your government. This is not just an assassination attempt. This is a full-fledged regime change operation." Traoré thanked the advisor and hung up the phone. His face had a steely expression. The enemy had failed in its first move but was not going to give up. A few weeks later, Intelligence Chief Maurice Sankara entered Traoré's office with an urgent report. "Mr. President, we have detected suspicious activity at Ouagadougou Airport. A diplomatic cargo plane belonging to the French embassy has requested permission for an unscheduled flight at midnight. The cargo manifest appears to be empty." Traoré went to the map. "This is not normal. Diplomatic flights are usually announced in advance." Sankara continued. "Our sources say that 17 large and heavy suitcases have been loaded onto the plane. Ambassador Jacques Dubois is also there in person." The glint in Traoré's eyes was a sign that an impossible plan had already begun. "I am giving the order for the operation, Maurice. Seal off the airport. The plane will not take off. I want the ambassador and those 17 suitcases." The VIP lounge at Ouagadougou Airport was witnessing the most tense moments in its history that night. It was midnight. Outside, the starry sky of Africa. Inside, the witnesses to an event that would change history. Traoré's special security team had taken control of every corner of the airport. The Red Berets had taken up positions at strategic points. The French diplomatic plane on the runway was surrounded by armored vehicles. The plane's engines were still running, the pilot waiting for takeoff clearance, but that clearance would never come. Around the long, polished table sat Burkina Faso's young leader Ibrahim Traoré, Intelligence Chief Maurice Sankara, Airport Director Ousmane Dio, Minister of Justice Aminata Traoré, and the night's main actor, French Ambassador Jacques Dubois. Sweat dripped from Dubois' forehead down to his collar. "Mr. President," he began in a trembling voice, "this must be a misunderstanding. Diplomatic immunity under international law." Traoré raised his hand, silencing him. There was not anger in his eyes, but deep disappointment. "Immunity, Ambassador," he said in a calm but firm voice, "is not a shield to be used for stealing our country's wealth." Sankara opened the thick file on the table. He took out photographs from the airport security cameras. 11:07 p.m., 3 vehicles from the French embassy enter the airport. 11:15 p.m., these 17 suitcases are loaded onto the plane. 11:38 p.m., you arrive at the VIP lounge. 11:45 p.m., the plane requests takeoff clearance. "These are diplomatic cargo," Dubois protested. "Under the Vienna Convention," Minister of Justice Aminata interrupted, "also states that diplomatic cargo must not contain weapons, drugs, or illegal materials." "What is in those suitcases, Ambassador?" Dubois fell silent. His eyes darted to the door, but there was no escape. "Open them," Traore said. A single word, but its weight filled the entire room. 2 soldiers placed the first suitcase on the table. The diplomatic seals were broken. When the lid was slowly raised, everyone in the room held their breath. The suitcase was filled to the brim with money, neatly stacked euro banknotes. Sankara put on his gloves and took a stack. 100 notes, exactly $1 million. "But this is just the beginning," said Traore. He opened the side compartment of the suitcase. Gold bars came out, each stamped with the mark of Burkina Faso. "This is our gold, the gold from our country's mines, the product of our people's labor." Dubois' face had turned ashen. I have no knowledge of these." The second suitcase was opened. This time, hundreds of pages of documents emerged. Traore began to examine the documents. His face grew more serious with each page he read. "Mining maps," he said. "Gold reserves not yet announced to the public. Uranium deposits. Even our newly discovered oil fields. This information is top secret," Sankara said. "Only 5 people know. You, me, the energy minister, the chief of staff, and..." His eyes caught a name on the list. Traore completed, and geology director Pascal Ouedraogo. So he has been bought. The third suitcase revealed hundreds of photographs. Sankara began to spread the photos on the table. Minister Ouedraogo at a nightclub in Paris. Who is with him? French arms dealers. General Carré at a bank in Geneva. What is in that briefcase in his hand? Money. As the other suitcases were opened, the scale of the conspiracy became even clearer. Fake IDs, the most secret documents of the Burkina Faso army. Bribery funds, luxury gifts, and even documents, audio recordings, and medical reports related to Traoré's private life. When the 9th suitcase was opened, Sankara dropped the papers in his hand. This is impossible." Inside were word-for-word transcripts of private security meetings Traoré had held with his most trusted commanders, which only 3 people knew about. The betrayal was much deeper than they had imagined. The 11th suitcase contained propaganda materials, a new future for Burkina Faso. Sankara read, "Leader General Laurent Compaoré." "Laurent Compaoré," Traoré said thoughtfully. "We thought he died in the 2019 coup attempt. Apparently, he is alive," Sankara said. "And the French have been hiding him." The 12th suitcase contained assassination kits. Odorless, tasteless poisons that leave no trace, mimicking a heart attack or a stroke. The 15th suitcase contained a threat list of thousands of names. Students, teachers, journalists, union members, clergy. Next to the names were codes: G for jailed, A for arrested, E for exile, and E for eliminated. At the top of the list, with the letter E next to it, was the name Ibrahim Traoré. The 16th suitcase was filled with military satellite images and an invasion plan. Before opening the 17th and final suitcase, Traoré took a deep breath. "This is the last one," he said. "Let's see what surprises it holds." Inside the suitcase was a single file, thick, black, covered, with gold letters written on it. Operation Sankara, secret. Traoré took the file. Thomas Sankara, the legendary leader of Burkina Faso, had been killed in 1998, and now, 36 years later, Traoré opened the first page. At the top was the date October 15, 1987, the day Sankara was killed. Operation Sankara. Traoré began to read. Objective: elimination of Thomas Sankara and installation of a pro-Western government. Participants: French Secret Service DGSE, CIA liaison officer Blaise Compaoré, and 12 Burkinabe officers. Method: armed assault during a palace meeting. Result: operation successful. Blaise Compaoré brought to power. French interests secured. Traoré turned the pages. The last pages revealed a chilling continuation plan. Operation Sankara Phase 2. Date: 2023-2024. Target: Ibrahim Traoré. Objective: elimination of Traoré, who continues Sankara's legacy. Method: first, political pressure. If unsuccessful, economic embargo. As a last resort, physical elimination. Preparation: purchase of 17 high-level Burkinabe officials. Preparation of Laurent Compaoré as a backup leader. Budget: $50 million. Approval received from Paris. Operation active. Traoré closed the file. His face was expressionless, but there was a deep sadness in his eyes. 36 years, he said. 36 years later, the same scenario, the same methods, the same killers. He turned to Ambassador Dubois. "I will give you one chance. You will return to Paris, but not alone. I am sending a message with you. Copies of the 17 suitcases, and you will deliver this message." Dawn was about to break outside. Burkina Faso is no longer a colony. Our gold, our uranium, our oil are ours. You cannot buy our people with blackmail, threats, or money. You killed Thomas Sankara, but you could not kill his ideas. When the palace door burst open with a loud noise, he saw his most trusted commander standing there, holding a phone. "Mr. President," the commander said breathlessly, "Laurent Compaoré is trying to cross the border with 200 mercenaries. The coup attempt has begun." As French Special Forces helicopters landed on the border, Traoré's order had already been given, and Russian advisors and the Cobra units were already in motion. The news the commander brought was expected but still shocking. The enemy had decided to play its cards openly. Traoré calmly said to his commander, "We are ready. The intelligence reported everything in advance. They will fall into the ambush set at the border." Then he turned to the ambassador. "As you can see, your games no longer work." At 6:00 a.m., Burkina Faso's national television interrupted its broadcast. Traoré appeared on the screen. Behind him, 17 suitcases were lined up. "Dear citizens," he began, "tonight we witnessed one of the most important events in our history. 17 suitcases were seized. I will now share their contents with you." For the next 2 hours, Traoré showed the contents of each suitcase one by one. Documents, photographs, money, weapons, everything was shown live to the whole world. 17 suitcases, he said finally. 17 million. 17 traitors, but we are 17 million, Burkinabe, and now we are awake. When the broadcast ended, there were thousands of people on the streets of Ouagadougou with flags and banners. Cries of "Long live independence," "Down with colonialism," "The children of Sankara are awakening," echoed in the sky. In Paris, crisis meetings were being held. The French president was furious. "This is unacceptable. We must intervene immediately. But the foreign minister was more cautious. Mr. President, the whole world is watching. The evidence is very clear. If we intervene, we will lose all of Africa. But it was too late. Burkina Faso's courage had created a domino effect. In Mali, President Assimi Goïta said, "All French company contracts will be reviewed." In Niger, thousands of young people took to the streets. "We want 17 suitcases too," they shouted. "Our uranium is ours." The young leaders of Africa were inspired by Traore's courage. An emergency session was called at the United Nations. The representative of Burkina Faso, placing the files on the table, asked, "What does international law say about stealing the resources of sovereign countries, controlling their leaders with blackmail, killing Thomas Sankara?" There was a deep silence in the hall. The representatives of China and Russia announced their support for Burkina Faso's sovereignty right. A week later, a delegation led by an old diplomat named Pierre Foucault came from France. "We want to talk," he said. "We want to open a new page." Traore accepted on one condition. "The talks will be broadcast live. My people will see everything." When the talks began, Traore took the first word. "First, let's confront the past. You had Thomas Sankara killed. Do you admit it?" After a long silence, Foucault said, "Mistakes were made in the past." Traore raised his voice. "Is killing a leader a mistake?" "Okay," said Foucault. "Yes, France played a role. We are sorry." This confession was broadcast live to the whole world. It was a historic moment. After hours of talks, a historic agreement was signed. Burkina Faso gained full independence. Mining contracts were cancelled. Military bases were closed. Laurent Compaoré, who was captured in the coup attempt at the border, confessed everything in court. France gave money, gave weapons, promised support, but they lied. They left me alone. 6 months later, Burkina Faso's economy showed unexpected growth. The revenues from gold exports were for the first time returning to the people. A school was built in every village, a health center in every neighborhood. The international press wrote, "The Burkina Faso miracle." "There is no miracle," Traore said in a speech. "We are just using our own resources ourselves. It is that simple." The 17 suitcases were moved to a museum. It was named the National Independence Museum. Years later, history books would write, "The 17 suitcases incident was the beginning of Africa's second independence movement. The first independence was political. The second was economic, and this time it was real." Traore went down in history as the leader who opened the 17 suitcases. But he always said, "I just opened the suitcases. The real work was done by my people. They woke up, claimed ownership, and fought. The victory is theirs." And Burkina Faso, once again, lived up to its name, Land of Upright People. You've seen nothing yet. The real operation began at midnight, and Traore was preparing to make another move that would shock the whole world. This would be not just an economic, but also a technological revolution. So after the 17 suitcases crisis, the West's economic retaliation was not long in coming. At 2 a.m., the phones were ringing non-stop. The central bank governor, the economy minister, and advisors were in an emergency meeting. Traore walked to the window. "How much reserves do we have?" he asked. The central bank governor, Dr. Amina Konate, said officially $400 million, but most of it is held in accounts in Paris. "We can't access it now." "And gold?" asked Traore. "We have 78 tons of registered gold reserves." But Dr. Konate hesitated. Traore completed with a bitter smile. "But that is also in France." Minister of Economy Ousmane Sonko said, "Mr. President, rejecting the CFA franc is economic suicide." Traore turned, fire in his eyes. "Suicide or liberation? Tell me, Sonko, how can we be an independent country when we can't even print our own money? The CFA franc, the last chain of colonialism." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Traore was right. But there seemed to be no alternative. Dr. Konate said, "Practically, what can we do? We don't have the infrastructure to create our own currency. Traore placed a file on the table. That is why I have been secretly preparing this plan for the last 3 months. The advisors looked at the file in surprise. Operation Sankara, Traore said. Thomas Sankara, Traore said. Thomas Sankara's unfinished dream. Financial independence. When he opened the file, everyone in the room gasped. Inside were detailed plans for a new currency to replace the CFA franc, the Burkina gold. This is impossible, the finance minister stammered. Traore smiled and pulled a small shiny disc from his pocket. It was a gold-colored coin with a baobab tree on one side and the country's map on the other. The prototype of the Burkina gold, he said, made from 100% domestic gold, extracted from our own mines, processed on our own soil, Dr. Konate said. But foreign companies control our mines. Traore's eyes gleamed. Not anymore. The economy minister jumped to his feet. You nationalize the gold mines. When? Officially, tomorrow morning, Traore said calmly, but the operation began 3 hours ago. The army is now taking control of all mines. French and American company executives are being politely escorted to the border. There was a stunned silence in the room. The move was bold, dangerous, but also brilliant. What about sanctions? Asked Dr. Kanedi. The West will do everything to crush us. Of course they will, Traore confirmed. But to punish us, they first need to access us, and this is where the second phase comes in. He pressed a button, and a world map appeared on the screen. Certain countries were marked: Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, India, Brazil. For the past 6 months we have made secret agreements with these countries, Traore said. Direct trade with their own currencies, bypassing the dollar or euro. We will sell our gold directly to these countries, and they will provide us with the technology and products we need. Hold on, don't miss this detail. You would never guess who the agent at that meeting was, and how they leaked these secret agreements to Paris. Traore revealed the most crucial part of his plan. He placed another file on the table. Inside were designs for digital wallets. The Burkina digital wallet, Traore said, a free mobile app for every citizen. A gold-backed digital currency, 100% transparent, secure, and most importantly, completely outside the Western banking system. The finance minister shook his head. This is crazy and brilliant, but how will we convince the people? Just then, Traore's assistant entered the room. Mr. President, the connection is ready. Traore turned to his team. Convince the people? Let me show you. The large screen turned on. On the screen were the leaders of 5 different African countries: Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin. Presidents, Traore said, I believe we have all received the same news. The West has drawn its economic weapon once again, but this time we are prepared. I want to tell you our plan. 2 hours later, when the meeting ended, there was a new energy in the room. Fear had given way to determination. Dawn is breaking, Traore said. Not just in Ouagadougou, but across all of Africa. Konati asked, Will you make the announcement to the public tomorrow morning? Traore shook his head. No, I will do it now. The people should know the truth before they go to the bank. They should feel pride, not panic. At 6:30 a.m., the people of Burkina Faso saw President Traore on their televisions. He was calm but determined. People of Burkina Faso, he began. Last night, French banks and Western financial institutions launched an economic war against our country. They cut off our access to our money. In homes and cafes, people looked at each other with concern. You know why they did this? Traore continued. Because we want our independence. Because we demand control of our resources. He brought the gold coin he was holding closer to the camera. From today, we are ceasing to use the colonial currency, the CFA franc. We are starting to use our own money, the Burkina gold, backed by 100% domestic gold. He then held up his mobile phone and showed the glowing app on the screen. And this is the Burkina digital wallet. It will be distributed free to every citizen. You no longer need banks for your money. Do not worry, Traore said. All the money in your CFA franc accounts will be converted to Burkina gold at double the value. No one will lose. Everyone will gain. After this sentence, small cries of joy were heard across the country. But most importantly, Traore continued, we will be the ones controlling our money, and we are not doing this alone. The screen split, and next to him appeared the faces of other West African leaders. They all conveyed the same message. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin were leaving the CFA franc system on the same day, at the same time, and transitioning to their own gold-backed currencies. When the speech ended, something extraordinary began to happen in the streets. Instead of rushing to the banks in panic, people were talking about the Burkina digital wallet app they had started downloading on their phones. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. In Paris, at 7:45 a.m., the French central bank was in an emergency meeting. The executive in charge of the Africa desk was looking at the data on the screen in horror. 6 countries left the system simultaneously, he said, trembling. This is a coordinated move. And what's more, the bank president asked impatiently, the digital wallets have been downloaded millions of times in just a few hours. The people are accepting this. There is no run on the banks. The president reached for his phone. I need to call the Ministry of Finance. We must start sanctions immediately. The ministry is already calling, said the assistant, handing him the phone. The voice on the phone was panicked. The mines are gone. The energy agreements are cancelled. The permits for military bases are revoked. All of West Africa is slipping out of our control. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré was monitoring international reactions in his office. As expected, the Western media was painting a doomsday scenario. But on the other hand, unexpected messages of support were pouring in. Russia, China, India, Turkey, Brazil, South Africa, all were filled with congratulations, cooperation offers, and promises to recognize their gold-backed currency. 3 months later, Ibrahim Traoré was invited to the BRICS summit. At the meeting in Moscow, world leaders listened to Traoré carefully. The gold standard was abandoned 50 years ago, said the Russian leader. Your bringing it back is quite interesting. We have not returned to the past, Traoré replied. We are going to the future. Digital gold, a currency backed by our own resources. This is new generation independence. The Chinese leader leaned forward. Your digital wallet technology is impressive. It could offer an alternative model for the global financial system. The agreements Traoré signed after the summit caused panic in the Western press. Direct energy and military agreements with Russia, technology and infrastructure projects with China, medicine and agriculture cooperation with India. Western newspapers were headlining, Burkina Faso is moving away from the West. Traoré's dangerous game. But Traoré just smiled. We are not moving away from the West, he told Dr. Konate. We are just getting closer to the whole world. We no longer have a single master. We have many partners. The whole world thought the trap had been broken, but the real shock was that the reason Traoré went off script and spoke those harsh words in his UN speech was an intelligence report that had just reached him. The report revealed that France was planning not just an economic, but also a military retaliation, and the key figure in this plan was a minister in his own cabinet. The voice on the phone was familiar. It was the voice of the man who had betrayed Sankara years ago. Just when they thought the danger had passed, a small note left on Traoré's desk turned everything back to the beginning. The game has just begun.